Okay, I'm talking about hunting knives that cross over into bushcraft. I myself, for various reasons, like that style of knife. I think with the right hunting knife, you can find a very good all-around knife, and with the right hunting knife, you can transfer very easily over into bushcraft. Now, this knife here is the KaBar Mark 1 Navy knife. It does come with a craton handle, I believe. This is the stacked leather. Now, this isn't exactly marketed as a hunting knife. It is more of a utility knife, but it is a good hunting knife. I can tell you that, and others out there can attest to that as well. It is an 1/8 inch thick 1095 full flat grind. This thing sharpens very nicely and very quickly out in the field. Once again, we're talking about advantages that a hunting knife may have over a traditional woodlore style bushcraft knife. And one of them, like I just mentioned, is field maintenance. We don't have wide bevels here. Okay, there's no wide bevels that will eat away at your diamond impregnated stones or rods or anything like that. This is a very small bevel, maintained very fast out in the field or at home. And also, you don't really require much media. A small chunk of ceramic like this, and this knife here will come back to life. The other nice thing about this is it being more of a general utility or hunting style knife, is we have somewhat of a guard here. And that is nice. That's very advantageous in the event of your hand is up inside the cavity of larger game and things like that, where you can't really see what's going on. And your hands may be slippery, may be cold, so you've lost some dexterity. So guards are not a bad thing to have. And depending on what's going on, a lot of times I can get around a guard. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't really impede me that much. I can do most of my camp notches and any of that with a hatchet or an axe. So if you put a knife like this in my hand, I'm going to do it no problem. Now, some people like to have the cutting edge go all the way as close as you can to the hand. Well, this third of an inch here, if you will, isn't really going to matter or make a difference for me. Okay, and as I've stated in other videos, if I need to do something so delicate that I can't use this knife, I don't know what that would be, but I've got a slip joint knife right here. And I can't imagine getting any more delicate than what this could handle. All right, you could neuter a gnat with this knife. And you could with this. Wicked slicer. Food prep is wonderful with this knife. Just sort of the weight of this knife going will bring itself down through it. So what we might do around camp or for camp is make some notches, right? I mean, this is stuff that we do. Stuff that we do in bushcraft. And I like to do things on hardwood because that's mostly what I deal with. And on top of that, if you're used to working with harder woods, when it comes time to grab the poplar, the willow, things like that, man, you swear you're cutting into a zucchini. I mean, it's that easy. So, but just make a quick notch with this knife. Now, the nice thing about this is you're never fighting geometry. You're never fighting geometry with this knife. And as I said, we'll just do some some quick notches without the use of a baton. Another thing too, you know, when you get snowy weather, sometimes it's not bad to have a cheap little pair of sunglasses to take with you, because sometimes that sunlight can be unbearable, and rather than cloak your face in a scarf or make some type of mask, which can be done, you can do with birch bark and some cordage. You can make yourself a mask to try to eliminate snow blindness. Sometimes I'll tell you, just carrying something like this here works wonderful. You hardly even know that they're there, even when you take them off and put them on top of your head. And we just leisurely are making this here. This is this knife here will obviously you know, carve your tri-sticks and all that stuff. You know, and once again, is this knife going to plane wood as easily as a Mora knife or a woodlore? Most likely not, because you're talking about two completely different grinds. The grind on a Scandinavian ground knife is it is for planing wood, and that is all that it is for. Really, when you're getting into thicker type of Scandi knives, they don't seem to work well on food prep or slicing, and the geometry is very inhibiting, in my opinion, when you're getting into knives in this class, these bigger type of knives. Now, when it comes to the thinner Scandinavian ground knives, I tend to prefer those more. But even those, you do give up some slicing ability. And once again, you've got a very wide bevel to contend with. So I know, you know, that out there there's things like tri-sticks that people are really into making, and you know, the competitiveness of bushcraft. For some reason, I don't know why it's competitive, but the competitiveness of it has turned into that you should be able to make a tri-stick in, you know, under 2 minutes with your belt knife. Well, I don't know why life expectancy doesn't begin to diminish, you know, after 2 minutes of when you're doing the tri-stick. But so it takes you 15 minutes to carve it. Really, what is that in the course of a day, right? 15 minutes is really nothing. As I said, I'm just going to do a couple different little ones, different little notches here, just to demonstrate that this knife is fine. Of course, I'm leisurely making this, but we're never in a hurry. At least you should never be in a hurry when you're using your knife. And most likely for doing notches like this, I would much rather use a baton to get my stop cuts. It's a lot quicker. But this way works fine too, and you really get to see if the knife is going to create any hot spots. And that's one thing about this knife, that this handle is very generous. It's very hand filling, and this pommel is quite thick. Okay, it's a good solid pommel. You can pound some tacks in with it. You know, little things like that. Small tent pegs. What it does too is it takes some of this weight and it shifts it into the back of the handle. So what you have is why this knife is good with hunting, is what you have is a knife that's very controllable all the way out to the tip. This is about a 5-inch blade, maybe a hair over. And because of this, you have this wonderful ability to really be in tune with the tip of this knife. It wants to sit back in your hand. It's not blade heavy. So it's really nice to use. And this roundness, as I'm telling you, with this handle, is nice in a myriad of grips. But you always know, which is another plus feature of having somewhat of a guard, you always know in dark conditions that if you set your knife down to do whatever, you know by grabbing it what side, without looking at it, is the side with the cutting edge on it, because you can feel this slight guard. Now, for some, this handle, if you have monstrous hands, this handle can be a little bit short for some people. Everything is radius nice, so I mean, there's not like there's like really any edges that are going to hurt your hand. So we'll just finish this up here. This here would be like maybe something more of a more of a pot hanger notch. But wonderful knife, and in my experience, holds an edge very nicely. Good 1095 heat treat, which is what we expect from KaBar. They work rather well with 1095. So I mean, you know, here we go. Here's a notch. Here's another notch here. We can do, of course, any other different types of notches, but just for show, that's what we have there. So you know, maybe a little bit of power cutting here, some chest lever grip. The one thing I do notice here is if you don't have a lot of clothing on to cushion yourself, sometimes this pommel can sort of dig into your ribs a little bit on things like the chest lever. So it's something that you got to be aware of a little bit. Once again, nothing that would really impede its usage to such a degree that I personally would say that I wouldn't carry it. But I obviously do carry it, and I do prefer this knife over the thick Scandinavian ground knives. Not much trouble there getting that to so wonderful knife. And you know, the great thing about these knives, these hunting knives that can cross over into bushcraft, and they're generally the heavier side of hunting knives, the heavy hunters and things like that. The nice thing about them is that when you can find one that crosses over into wood well, you'll find that you have a very, very well-rounded knife. A knife that you can do your camp cooking with relative ease in the outdoors, and a knife that you can do game with, and a knife you can do your campcraft with, i.e. hearth boards, certain camp notches, and other things like that. Things that we as bushcrafters do. Now, I always carry, for the most part, I always carry a chopping tool, like a hatchet or an axe, or sometimes a larger knife. I would not sit there and process a day's worth of kindling with this. I have processed plenty of kindling with this. I'm not afraid to use this knife. As I stated in the other video, if you're not breaking your Mora classics and your stick tang Pucos and those things, you will not break this KaBar. All right. Now, the one thing where the Woodlore and the Woodlore design, the Woodlore clones have over this, is it has a full tang construction, and it is thicker, obviously, most of them, than an eighth of an inch thick. And usually those knives, I mean, you can sit there and split wood the rest of your life, and you'll probably never, have any issues with the knife. The drawback of it is obviously doing other things other than splitting. And as I said, I do carry things. I have a kit mentality, and So I have a tool that will split my kindling. And if I were to make a fire right now with what I have on me, you could bet that even though my knife can do it all day long, I'm going to use the hatchet. Sometimes out of laziness, or if it's a little dark, or the area is tight, maybe heavy, dense brush, then perhaps a knife for batoning certain kindling and maybe taking down some saplings and stuff like that is warranted. But usually, as I said, the harder work is given to the hatchet or the axe or the large knife. I also have a Laplander in my kit all the time, which is in my haversack. So, USN Navy knife, Mark 1, made by KaBar. Very good crossover knife. As you can see, no issues making anything that we would need to make for bushcraft. Thanks for watching. Take care.